Recording in progress. All right. So in this example, what I want to do is I want to make a list of random numbers. So I'm just going to call this random list. And I am going to work it into the practice assignment. We'll get there. All right. So let's see. If I'm going to make a random list, a list of random numbers, I need a list to put stuff in. So the first thing I should do is make a new list. And I'm going to make this, since, let's see, there's just numbers in this list. I'm going to call the list numbers. And I want to start with an empty list. I don't want to be the random generator because Scratch is a great random generator. To make this easy, I'm just going to say, let's see, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to make just 10 random numbers, but I'm going to give there a bit of more of a range. Let's say maybe from 1 to 30. So I'm going to pick a random number from 1 to 30, and I want to put 10 of them in a list, is what I want to do. So let's get that set up. I'm going to need, I like the flag to get things started. Okay, in this case, I don't have to have a counter because Scratch has a block for lists called add, which is always going to go to the next available place. So since my list is empty, the first time I use add, it's going to put it in the first place. The second time I use add, it's going to go to the second place, and so on. Okay, so I don't have to have a counter for this, but often when we're playing with lists, we do need a counter. Here I can get away without one. So what do I want to add to numbers? Well, I want to add a random number. So I'm going to use this add, pick random 1 to 30 to my numbers. But I do need a loop to make this happen. So I got to go grab a repeat loop. And I'm just going to repeat 10 times. Pick a random number from 1 to 30. Okay, so let's think. Add is just going to go to the next available slot, which will be 1 the first time, and then 2 the second time. The repeat loop on its own does not need a counter. It's just going to do whatever's inside 10 times in a row. I think this will work.
I have done the funny.
You did something funny. Let's see what you got here.
So what I did, I added to what you did.
Okay.
How many numbers should I randomly add to the list?
Cool.
And then set the numbers we'll set a variable numbers to the answer, and it'll repeat that many times.
All right, so I'm going to run this, and then Aiden just upped the challenge. So we're going to try to do what you did there. So first I'm going to run it and see if it does what I think it should. So I'm going to hit the flag, and I should get 10 different numbers between 1 and 30. Yeah. That's cool. Okay.
No,
so
you got 17 times.
Sorry, I missed that. What?
You got 17 3 times.
17 occurred 3 times. Oh my gosh. I need to write that down and tell my mother. There's going to be some significance to that in my life. 17 3 times. Okay, I will get back to you what my mom says about that. Let's see. Now, in numerology, you would add the 1 and the 7 and say that also means 8. But that the 8 came from a 17 is different than an 8 that comes from a 35. Those have 2 different meanings numerologically. I don't know what they are, but my mom does. So I'll check with her on that. Okay, so what Aiden said is, let's let the user suggest how many numbers to generate. Let's try that. So to do that, we need a sensing variable. So I'm going to ask.
Don't forget to put the delete. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for the list. Yes, good point. Oops, I just broke my keyboard.
Get that one.
Oh. So let's see, how many random does not have an E today, numbers do you want? Question mark. And Jonathan reminded me that at the start of this, I should empty the list out. Otherwise, add will just keep throwing numbers onto the end of the 10 I already have.
Speaking of adding to lists, what I did for the hangman assignment a little bit ago.
Yeah.
I added a feature to let you add words to the list.
Oh, that's a nice feature. Excellent.
At the
Thank you.
start, it's like select either one or two. If you select one, you just play hangman. Select two, you could add a word.
Oh, I can't wait to look at that. Thank you. All right, so let's see. I need to use the answer. Now, you know, another thing we should do, we should check to see if that's actually a number. And I'll take a look at that next. So I'm assuming they're giving me a number. So I'm going to clear the list when I click the flag. I'm going to ask how many numbers, random numbers do you want? I'm going to take whatever they give me, hoping it's a number. And then I'm just going to repeat that many times.
You said letters equal 0, right? Anything that's not a number equals 0.
When we try to do arithmetic on it, yes.
Yeah, so if we like,
So hang on one sec. Let's check this and then we'll get to that idea. One idea at a time. Hang on. So I'm going to hit the flag and then I'm going to say, I'm just going to want 2 random numbers. Cool. And if I hit the flag again and I say, okay, I want 17 random numbers, I should get 17. It says length 17. Okay. So let's back up a second and see if we can determine the difference between a number and a non-number. So here's the idea on that. And what I'm going to do is 2 things. I want to check to see if the answer is 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a special multiplication fact that when you multiply by 0, you get 0. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that answer and I'm going to multiply it by 0. Now, if somebody gives me a letter and I try to use the letter in a calculation, actually, no, I want to multiply by 1, not 0 here. If somebody gives me a letter and I try to do a calculation with the letter, Scratch says, wait a minute, that's not a number. You can't calculate with numbers. Let's just call it 0. So if I enter an A, Scratch is going to say A is not 0. But when Scratch plugs A in here, it's going to say A times 1 is 0, which is a problem because you can't have something that's not 0 multiplied by 1 and get 0. Okay. So then what I want to do is on this right here, I want to check to see if that result is 0 or not. So I need another operator and I want to know, oops, come here, operator. Where'd you go? 0. I want to know if this is 0 or not. All right, and then I want to write this down. So I'm going to copy this into my script to talk about it a little bit more. So let's get a screenshot of that sucker.
I found a simple solution.
Okay, hang on one sec. Let me finish this and then we can take a look at what you got. So I'm going to add this to a new page and look at the logic here. All right, so what I'm trying to do right here, so there's a little deviation from our list, but that's okay. I'm trying to figure out whether I have a letter or a number. And if it's a letter, like let's suppose answer equals A, then over here, when I ask Scratch, does A equal 0? Scratch is going to say that is false. And over here, when I ask Scratch about this right here, it's going to say A times 1 is 0. And I'm going to ask if that is equal to 0. And Scratch is going to say that is true. And what I want here is 2 trues. So I'm going to squeeze in front here a not on that. And that will switch that to a true. So what this will tell me is that if I take something that's not 0, but I multiply it by 1 and I get 0, it must be not a number. It must be a letter. So if these two things are true, if this and that are true, boom, boom, then what I have here is a letter, not a number. And as far as letter goes, it's just a non-numerical string. It's a string with other stuff in it, which is a problem. Big thing there is it's not a number,
What I did
if
was
that happens. All right, Aiden, what do you got?
I used an if else block.
Yeah.
Where if answer times 1 is 0, then it will say not a valid answer. If answer times 1 is 0, then it will say not a valid answer, try again.
Yeah, since in this case, we don't want 0 either.
Yeah.
But if 0 was okay, then we would have to have this extra check. So Aiden's point was, since we want a positive number here, this is enough to do the check that we need. But if you in general wanted to distinguish between letters and numbers, you need the and not 0 in there too. And that will successfully check all the time, whether it's numerical or not. So then the code would look something like if not answer equals 0 and answer times 1 is 0, then this is not a number, else this is a number. And I mentioned before, it is important to check user input to see if it's the kind of thing that we're looking for. So I'm going to add that to my script. And then we're going to move on to something else. So let's see, I said to finish this, I need a not with that. And then I want to connect those two with an and. And I've shown this before. Whenever I need to do complicated arithmetic or complicated logic, I like to grab all the pieces separately. And then once I like each part, then I start putting them together. Right? I started with answer times 1, and then I included the equals 0. I started with the answer equals 0, and then I threw in the not. Now that I have those two pieces, I'm ready to drop them into my and here. And if I'm satisfied with that, I'm ready to grab my if. So I'm going to do an if else on this. So if both of those two things are true, then I'm going to say, sorry, that's not a number. Please select the flag to try again. And then otherwise, I want to do my repeat block here on it. So I'm confirming, is the input a number or not? This checks to see that it's not a number. If it's not a number, we're done because there's nothing after this. They have to hit the flag to try again. Otherwise, it does what I wanted it to do.
One thing we should do is add a cap to how much you can add to the list, so you don't generate like.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. A lot of times in programs, we'll restrict people from putting in too big of things. Like, do you ever go try to upload an image and your email program says, sorry, that image is too big? You know, somebody had to write a check for that. So we could add another check where we can't, the list can't go beyond 100 or 1,000 or whatever we say. Right. So that's possible too. We could add another if then else block that says, you know, the number has to be less than whatever. Here, I'm just going to say, how many random numbers do you want? Question mark. No more than 100, please. You decide whenever your balance can be. So I'm not going to put the actual check in there for now, but that would be pretty easy to do. We just say if the answer is greater than this, try again. Or you could go the other way. Okay, so we have a random number generator. Now I'm gonna switch this a little bit. Well, I should check to see if it runs. So let's make sure I didn't screw up my logic. How many numbers do you want? I'm gonna say 10, and it should make 10. And if instead I answer Gary, it should say that is not a number. Sorry, that's not a number. Please try again. Cool. All right, so I'm going to put 17 numbers in there again. So here I have my 17 random numbers. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to add to this. I'm going to try to get the biggest number in the list. And I'm going to keep working on this right here. So I'm going to pull this off of the flag. And I'm just going to leave the flag there. I'm going to zoom out for a sec. And I'm going to add a new event. And I'm going to do when space is pressed. But instead of space, I'm going to select the letter L for largest number. And so I'm going to write down on a piece of paper my idea, and then I'm going to try and do it. So let's go to my notebook. There it is. All right. So I want to find the largest number in list. So let's just steal a few of the numbers from my existing list here. Let's grab just that group for now. Add to current page. All right. So here's my example list of numbers. I'm just going to go with 6 of them for now. So I want to loop through the list. So I'm going to do a repeat on this for the length of the list. So since I have to look at the numbers one at a time, I'm going to need a counter for the position. So I'm going to call it row this time. So for variables, I'm going to need a variable for the row. And I'm also going to need another variable to find the largest number. So I'm just going to call that largest. And actually, I have a friend who's a very lazy typer. He's like, man, largest, that's too big a word. Call it max. It's shorter. Fine, call it max. So again, I need 2 variables for sure. I could be wrong about that, but we'll see. So inside the list, what's going to happen? Well, I think really all I need to do is I just need to compare these sort of one at a time. So I think what I'm going to do is in my loop, I'm going to set max to an item in list. I'm just going to call it item. So when my list starts, it's going to set max equal to 7. And then after that, what I want to do is if I think I have the order of operations wrong, we'll see in a second. If the item I am looking at is greater than the max, then that's going to be my new max. Yeah, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to put this in here. Set max to item. So if max is greater, I'm going to set it to that item. And else, I don't care. So when I get into this the second time, max will be 7. Second time through, it's going to say, oh, 12 is greater than 7. So then max is going to become 12. And then the third time through, it's going to say, is 5 greater than 12? Nope, I don't need to do anything. Is 6 greater than 12? Nope, don't need to do anything. Is 14 greater than 12? Ah, yes, then it's going to set max equal to 12. So that's inside the if. So those are there. And then on the same, right after the if, then I'm going to have to increase my row counter. So that I'm going to change row by 1. Now, we need to initialize both row and max. So let's go into Scratch and do that. And I think this might be enough to do it. Let's give it a try. Blow this up, scoot over. All right, so let's see, what do I have for variables at the moment? Am I using my variable anywhere? I don't think I'm using that yet. No, so let's rename my variable. That can be my row. So I'm using row instead of position here. And then I need another variable to find the max. So I'm going to call that max. And for sure, I want to set row to 1. And I should set max to something. Now, you might say, well, let's set max to 0 because my numbers should be bigger than that. Now, yes, that's true at the moment because I am generating numbers from 1 to 30. But what if somebody threw in negative numbers? 0 is bigger than them. That could screw shit up. So I think what I'll do instead of setting max to 0, I don't want it to set it to nothing either because I'm working with numbers. I think what I want to do is I want to set it to item 1 of numbers. I'm just going to upfront set it to the first item. And then I'm ready to set up my loop. So control, I want to repeat. And inside the repeat, I want an if. And then let's see, for my repeat, we need the length of the list. So I want length of numbers. There you are. So that's going to go in the repeat. And operator for the if, I'm going to use the greater than operator. And I want to know if the number or the row, the item I'm looking at in the list, I want to know if that is bigger than whatever max currently is. So the easy part there is max is going to go on the second part. And then I have to grab item blank of numbers. And which item do I want? I want the item at whatever row I'm currently on. So if the item in numbers at the row I'm at is bigger than max, that should be my new max. Now, somebody might say, well, you should probably have another variable for that. And my philosophy on that is I'm only going to make another variable if it needs to be used in more than 2 places. And in this case, it doesn't, because the only other time I need that is in the next line where I'm going to reset max to whatever this item is right there. Now, if you ask me to also say what that number is, then I'm going to go, oh, okay, now I'm repeating the same block 3 times. I should really put this in a variable to reuse it. But just doing it twice, I think, is not a big deal. Does anybody not get what I'm saying there about a variable? You don't get it?
No, I get
You
it.
get it, okay.
Saying, like, don't
Okay.
you also need to change row, so kind of like
that. Yeah, I need to change the row. Yeah, I've been forgetting to do that often. So I also want to change outside of the if. This is important. It's going to go outside the if. I want to change row by 1. Oops, what did I do? I hit the wrong thing. Row, there we go. Okay, is this what I said I was going to do in my notes? Let's see. I want to repeat for the length of the list. If item is greater than max, then set max to item and then change row by 1. Otherwise, I have my sets before that. Okay, I think I'm looking good here. All right, let's see if it works. So looking at my list now, my list has a 30 in it. So this should give me 30 after I run it. How am I going to get the answer? Well, I have 2 ways to get it. I could put in a say block, or I could just turn on the view of max here. so I can see what max becomes after it runs. So I'm just gonna do it that way. So I'm gonna hit the flag to get it started, and then mine says press the L key to find the max, so I'm gonna hit L, and it should say 30. Now, just for fun, I'm gonna double check that this is working right. I'm gonna go manually change one of my items to something bigger than 30. So I'm gonna go grab, like in row 12, I have a 3. I'm gonna make it a 100. And then I'm gonna hit L again and see if it finds the 100. Oops, I hit the flag, and then L, it found the 100. Okay, so I think I did it. All right, so I'm just gonna jazz this up a tiny bit more. So I am going to, and I'll come back for questions in just a sec. I'm gonna add a when space is pressed, and I'm gonna put that on the generation of new numbers. And then I'm going to add another when space is pressed over here. And instead of space or L, I'm going to put an S there. Guess what S might stand for? What was that? Declan? Smallest number. We're going to find the smallest number next. Okay, before we do that, I just want to pause for a second. Does anybody have a question about my algorithm here for finding the largest number in a list?
So what I'm thinking is you can do something similar to what you did.
So a suggestion was made to find the smallest number is we could pretty much replicate the code we have here and replace less than with greater than. There's one small problem with that.
It'll set the largest, it will change the largest variable.
Yeah, so we really should have another variable for this.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
it says.
So make a variable that's called smallest or min and use that in here instead of max. And you can swap that out with a less than, and that'll do it. And I would recommend, if you didn't give this a name, now at the moment mine's called random list. I'm going to rename this try 9-4 because this is try it out 9.4 in the book. 9.4 shows a similar algorithm for finding the max, and the try it out says, now modify this script to find the min. We have an extra feature here that says make a new list of numbers. So one thing I'm gonna do on this is on the flag, I'm just gonna have my sprite tell what the options here are. So I'm just gonna have my sprite say, enter, hit the space key to make a new list of numbers, use the L key to find the largest number in the list, use the S key to find the smallest number in the list to get it started.
Wow, it works.
Cool, Aiden had success. All right, so it's your mission now or later to finish the code for the minimum, the smallest number in the list.
To be honest, I feel like pressing space at